please.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be here in Korea today. I am, I believe, not only amongst peers, but amongst very eminent and prominent people here. We have current ministers of the Assembly, previous ministers of the Assembly, a previous Prime Minister Deputy. It is my real honor. And I want to thank in particular the Chairman of the Organizing Committee of SciCon, Mr. Park Bong-kyu, for inviting me to be here. Thank you so much. I love being here, and I feel I am amongst peers, because I lament that in the world today, we have lost the ability to think. And one of the topics of today is artificial intelligence. And in a strange and bizarre way, AI is stopping us even further from thinking, because we can just ask AI to come up with a new idea, and it does it for us. And my contention today, and I want to show you, is that the ability to think for ourselves will keep us ahead of the competition, whether we're talking about us as individuals, or our companies, or our countries, or even the planet. A little bit about me. I advise heads of state, so I feel I'm in good company of presidents, family officers, and A-listers. I've decided to test my ability to converse in Korean. And the truth is, I've employed an AI friend of mine called Google Translate. I hope it's done a pretty accurate job. I did a PhD in electrical engineering. That gives me my technical background. I have taught how to think, basically, in 26 countries. I've written 15 books on real estate, another 8 on other topics, how to take your business global. I've been blessed. I've been on the New York Times list. One of my books here, Real Estate Riches, has anyone read it already? Okay, good. Would anyone like to read it? Okay. You see, we have trained ourselves to absorb information, listen to a speaker, or at least be polite and look in his direction as if you are listening, but we're no longer engaging. We scroll through social media, we watch TV, and we don't think. So that is why when you're awake, you will get books here. Anyway, this book first came out as part of the Rich Dad series, and it has since been translated into a number of languages. Here it is in Bahasa for the Indonesia and Malaysia market. Here it is in Japanese. Here it is in Greek. And just an indication of the Greek economy, I have never received a royalty payment from Greece. It's an interesting facet. And here, believe it or not, we have it in Korean. It's my pleasure that it's been published here as well. So it's had a lot of success around the world, but it's one of many books I've written. I've got another one here. Who'd like this book? Oh my gosh, the hands went up before I finished the sentence. Life is funny like that. If you never know what to expect, you're more wide awake. So I've been very blessed. I've also got audio courses, of course, many in English, but some of them are in Asian languages. I love it here in Asia. And I've featured on a number of magazines all around the world. Here I am in Indonesia's foremost property magazine. They call me the #1 international real estate guru. And I've even had the president of one country write the foreword to one of my books. That was kind of fun. And then here in Asia, I've been speaking at Success Resources National Achievers Congress going back to 2003 when all of us looked a lot younger. There I am, 2006. I teach at Tony Robbins' Wealth Mastery. And there was someone in the audience here who came to me and said that they were at this last event. So it just goes to show these messages get out there. Here I am with Jay Abraham, the world's foremost marketing expert. We did a tour of Vietnam together. Here I am teaching. I think that's in Singapore. I love sharing information. This one was in Kuala Lumpur, I believe, 3,000 people in the audience. And I've been a professor of real estate at UNT, the University of North Texas. I'm not saying any of this to impress you, but to impress upon you that when you have a broad background, you can draw on many experiences. The same goes for all of you, different backgrounds. No one is better than anyone else. I want to seed a thought for you. Everyone on this planet can do something better than you. What each person does better than you might vary from person to person, but everyone can do something better than you. And similarly, you can do something better than everyone else on this planet. It's a very humbling thought. And that's why these conferences are so useful, because we get to learn the things we don't know from other people. So I set out on a quest to buy one house a week for an entire year. I didn't do it in a year. We did it in 9 months, which I found is quite interesting. And I've also done commercial real estate. But here's where I want to point out a difference. Many people, when they invest, be it in real estate or stocks, equities, mutual funds, options, futures, they look at how much money has to go in and what return do they get, the return on investment, the yield, and then what can they sell it for. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't do it that way. I've tried to figure out a different way of doing it. How can I create value to create something that wasn't there before? So I want to give you some modest examples of what we've done. Before I get onto that, here is a man, his name is Jim Rogers. He made $3 billion on Wall Street and then retired. He bought a motorbike and went all the way around the world with his girlfriend and wrote the book, The Investment Biker. And his contention was that if you lived in the 1800s and you wanted to be someone of importance, you had to live in the United Kingdom. And if you lived in the 1900s, last century, and you wanted to do well financially, you had to live in the United States. But if you live in this century, the 21st century, you have to be based in Asia. And he moved his family to Asia. He's based in Singapore right now. I believe Asia is the future for the next 4 or 5 generations of where the growth will be, because much of the West has become complacent because they have lost the ability to think. So, I spent a lot of time working with dolphins for my PhD. I worked on sonar systems, and I love dolphins. I think they're very intelligent. In fact, there I am playing with them. But they have the largest brain for their body mass of any mammal, the biggest brain there is. And 90% of that brain is devoted to processing auditory signals. That's why they're so good at echolocating. But they're not the only animals that do that. Bats also echolocate, and they do it in a completely different way. They don't do it in the time domain, but in the frequency domain. And I use that technology to help develop spectacles for blind people. You can imagine children who are born blind. They've got no idea of spatial awareness. And we fit them with these spectacles that radiates the environment with sound, and it comes back, and these devices process that sound, and they can hear direction and range. And I cannot describe to you the look on the faces of these blind children when for the first time they realize that they know where an object is. So that was very rewarding research. But I wrote papers on that at the time, and I got visited by the US military because they had a problem that mines were being left in US harbors that the best military sonars could not find. And they were all using the dolphin sonar. And they said, we see that you're using the bat sonar. Do you think you could do this? And I said, well, let's do some calculations. And to keep the story short, I ended up working under the auspices of the military. My thesis was classified. Those of you who've ever written a thesis will know the significance of that. When your peers ask you, can we see your thesis? And you say, no, not yet, it's classified. And they say, oh, we've all done a PhD like that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun doing this work, finding these mines and neutralizing them, if you like. So it takes different kinds of thinking. So how did this relate to real estate? Well, I had a piece of land in the desert of Arizona, In fact, Geelong, who's here with a contingent of his contemporaries from Vietnam, he visited me, oh gosh, was it 6 weeks ago? Something like that. And we looked at a lot of places. This was too far out to visit on that trip. But it was blank desert with land that was not worth very much. And most people would say, well, let's sell it or sit on it for 10 years. And I don't like waiting 10 years. I'd rather do something else. So I thought, what else can I do with this land? And I started digging a hole. I had a fleet of earth-moving machines that worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months. And the hole kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I started filling it with water. It took 3 months to fill with water. And I developed water ski lakes. And even though I lost about 20 hectares of land because it went underwater, the value of the remaining land went up in value by way more than what we lost underwater. This is using your ability to think. Now, AI comes into it. When you have a water ski lake, the biggest problem you've got after a boat has gone through the water is what we call the wake, the wave that is created. So what angle of lake do you want to have the least wake possible? That's where AI comes into it. Turned out for us to be 16 degrees. We had a problem with lakes in the desert. You have mosquito larvae that breed there. You get mosquitoes. And you also have algae blooms. So you need fish to eat the mosquito larvae and fish to eat the algae blooms. But the challenge is the fish that eat the mosquito larvae also eat the fish that take the algae blooms. So it takes a lot of work. I'm not saying this is simple, but it's invigorating and it's fun. So I so believe that there are things you can do to increase the value of property. I've written a book on it. It's the longest title on Amazon. It's called 101 Ways to Massively Increase the Value of Your Real Estate Without Spending Much Money. I happen to have a copy here. Who would want a copy of this book? Geelong, your hand was first, but you're disqualified. You've already got one. Who wants a copy? I see one in the... The next thing I want to share, you won't believe. And I forgive you for not believing it. But I'm going to tell you anyway. It's how we turned $20 into $2 million overnight. Who wants to learn how to do that? Well, firstly, I'll tell you what the $20 was spent on. A bucket of paint, white paint, and a brush. But to explain how it was done, I need to set the scene. It happened here in Asia, in Jakarta. Many of you know Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia. But it is also known as the most congested city on this planet. You measure how far it is to your destination, not in terms of kilometers, but hours. So from the CBD, the Central Business District, to Sukarno-Hatta International Airport. It should be a 45-minute ride, but because of traffic, it can take 3 hours or 6 hours. So a president or CEO of a company in a building that has a 9 a.m. board meeting cannot book a 2 p.m. flight because they may not make it. So I took this bucket of white paint and the brush, and I went onto the roof of the building. It was a flat concrete roof. And I painted a big white circle. And in the middle, I painted the letter H. I turned it into a helipad. And now the ride to the airport was 15 minutes. And the rental, when you convert it from rupiah per square meter to what I'm familiar with, dollars per square foot, it went from $14 to $16 a square foot. Everyone thought it was worthwhile. They were either going to make use of the facility or they had bragging rights. Our building has a helipad. There was about 10,000 square meters or 100,000 square feet times $2 a foot is the rent went up by $200,000 a year, and at a 10% cap rate, it increased the value of the building by $2 million. This didn't come about because of a bucket of paint. It came about because of the ability to think differently. That book, 101 Ways, you cannot read that without identifying 13 or 15 or 20 things in your building right now that you can implement to massively increase the value. So why would you not do that? So there's the helipad. And then what I do is I teach companies how to think differently. We do it in the real estate realm. I've got some experience there. But I've spent 30 years taking technology from one part of the world to another part of the world. And I'm excited to announce that for the first time ever, I can share a project that I've been working on for 10 years that is involving governments of a number of nations, but we're looking for partners. And that is, we all know that energy consumption is going up, electric vehicles are taking over, we need more electricity to feed them. And we want renewable resources, solar and wind. The challenge with wind is when there's no wind, they don't generate electricity, obviously. And the challenge with solar is when the sun sets, there's no power from those solar panels. So we're working on a plan, and we've tested every component of it. We didn't have launch satellites big enough to launch them, but now with the SpaceX rockets, we can launch them. We are deploying solar panels in outer space. They collect sunlight, convert it to electricity, and microwave it down to Earth through a beam that you can steer. It's a phased array. You can pinpoint exactly where you want the electricity to arrive. And because it's in outer space, we're no longer limited to day or night. It can generate electricity 24 hours a day. Now, something on that scale is a massive project. This is the first time I've mentioned it publicly. I'm seeding the thought. I've been speaking and meeting a few people that I think could be interested in South Korea playing a role with that. I'm open to discussions on that. This is what excites me. So in New Zealand, which is where I'm from originally, I now live in the United States, very beautiful, clean country. Lord of the Rings was filmed there. It's all natural scenery. I run events there, and I also run them in Italy in a place called Bellagio on the shores of Lake Como. And this is where we teach people how to think differently so that they can make a quantum leap, so that instead of waiting for the economy to improve, they can take action now. And I hear it and agree with comments made earlier that inflation is high. Interest rates are the highest they've been in about 40 years. Does that bother me? No, not at all. I don't like that they're high, but it doesn't bother me, and here's why. When I started investing in real estate, I know I'm getting old. When I started, interest rates were 23%. Does anyone remember interest rates that high? A few of you do. I wasn't concerned because I knew that in all probability they wouldn't continue going up the way they did in Argentina or Israel, but they'd come down again. And when they came down, real estate values would rise through the roof, economies would boom, and they did. We're going through a harsh time. We've kept the recession at bay. We've kept a stagnation at bay. And when interest rates come down, which they will, when you've lived on this planet long enough, you see cycles. And every peak is higher than the previous peak. And every trough is higher than the previous trough. Things don't go up linearly, as mathematicians would say. They go in fits and starts, but they go up. So I am confident that at some stage in the foreseeable future, when interest rates come down, there'll be another surge. And those people who would do well are people who took action today because they thought through what it is they want to achieve. So with that, I want to share with you, that's where we run these events, where we teach people how to train. If you're interested, you can grab a screenshot of that, or else you get my business card later on. That is where we teach this thing, and I'm offering it to people. This is why Geelong and I have been working together to bring a lot of this technology to Vietnam. And now with Mr. Park Bong-kyu, it is my honor and pleasure to announce that we're collaborating to bring this technology to Korea. I love it here. I genuinely do. The honor system, the respect you have for each other, the kindness. It is second to none. And some of the Western world is losing that. And it is always the people who think differently who help push the world forward. So that is my mission in life, to get what I've learned in my time here out to the masses. And to finish off, they say experience is the best teacher. And it's true. But it doesn't always have to be your own experience. For instance, I don't need to try cocaine or heroin to decide whether drugs are for me. I'm happy to rely on the experience of other people. So we offer our global experience to help you go to the next level. And with that, if you want to know more about that, see, of course, our chairman here, Mr. Park Bong-kyu. I want to thank you so much for honoring me with your time. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you.